They expected hell, not hamburgers. When German prisoners of war stepped off trains onto American soil in 1944, they braced for punishment, for starvation, for chains. Instead, they smelled bacon. These weren't monsters. They were men, young soldiers of the Wehrmacht, captured across multiple theaters of war. Some were barely 20 years old. Most had never been outside of Germany. They crossed the Atlantic in the belly of transport ships, haunted by Nazi propaganda that promised them torture at the hands of their captors. They arrived at camps across America, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, expecting the worst. But what they didn't know was that America had a secret weapon: kindness. Their first meal on American soil was unforgettable. Fresh coffee, not the burnt grain substitute they'd choked down for years. White bread with butter, eggs, bacon, even fruit. Some prisoners laughed in disbelief. Others stood frozen, afraid it was a trick. One prisoner wrote in his diary, "I couldn't believe what they gave us to eat. I thought perhaps tomorrow they would take it away." This. One prisoner, they would take it away. But tomorrow came, and the food kept coming. That night, in barracks lit by dim bulbs, they wrote letters home, trying to explain the impossible. The enemy was feeding them better than their own army ever had. So, why did America do this? The answer lies in something most soldiers had never heard of: the Geneva Convention. International law required nations to treat prisoners humanely, to feed them adequately, to house them safely. Germany ignored these rules. Allied POWs in German camps faced starvation, forced labor, and brutal conditions. But America played by the book, not because they were naive, but because they believed that civilization, even in war, mattered. And so German POWs in America received 3 meals a day, medical care, and shelter. The irony? Many ate better as prisoners than they ever had as soldiers. But here's where the story gets complicated. While POWs ate meat and fresh vegetables, American families were rationing. Sugar was scarce. Butter was precious. Meat was a luxury. Some Americans noticed. Letters poured into newspapers. "Why do prisoners eat steak, while our boys overseas get canned rations?" It wasn't fair. It wasn't logical, but it was American. Because even when it hurt, even when it seemed absurd, America refused to become what it was fighting against. And something unexpected began to happen. The prisoners didn't just eat American food, they learned to make it. German bakers worked alongside American cooks. They shared recipes, told jokes in broken English. In November 1944, camps across America served Thanksgiving dinner to their prisoners. Turkey, stuffing, pumpkin pie. For many, it was the first time they'd felt normal in years. One prisoner later wrote, "They treated us not as enemies, but as guests who had simply arrived at the wrong time." But what the prisoners didn't know was that these meals were changing them. For many prisoners, the food became something more than sustenance. It became a message. Every meal said, "You're still human. You still matter." They began to see their captors not as monsters from propaganda posters, but as men. Men who shared the same hunger, the same exhaustion, the same longing for home. Friendships formed. Not many, and not easily, but they formed. One prisoner wrote home, "Mother, everything they told us was a lie. These Americans, they are not what we believed." The realization came slowly, like dawn breaking. Every Nazi propaganda film they'd watched, every speech about American cruelty, every warning about the decadent West. Lies. In the camps, they had access to books, newspapers, films. They saw America as it truly was flawed, yes, but free. Not every prisoner changed their mind. Some remained loyal to the Reich until the bitter end. But many began to question everything they'd been taught. And it started with a simple plate of food. The meals became a quiet form of peace. Every breakfast, every dinner, every shared cup of coffee, each one was a small surrender, not of pride, but of hate. Because it's hard to hate someone who feeds you. It's hard to see monsters in the eyes of men who treat you with dignity. Behind the barbed wire, something profound was happening. The war was being lost, but humanity was being won. When the war ended, the prisoners went home. They returned to a Germany in ruins, to cities destroyed, to families scattered. But something remarkable happened. Thousands returned to America not as prisoners, but as immigrants. They brought their families. They built lives. They became citizens. Decades later, when interviewed, they spoke of many things. The fear, the loneliness, the confusion. But always, they remembered the food. One former prisoner said, "I came to America as an enemy. I stayed because of how they treated me when I was their prisoner." The lesson of the German POWs isn't about food. It's about what food represented. In the darkest war in human history, when hatred consumed continents, America made a choice to see the humanity in their enemies, to feed them, to treat them fairly, to show them, through simple acts of decency, what freedom truly meant. Behind the barbed wire, they didn't just taste American food. They tasted what humanity and mercy really meant. If you want to hear more untold stories from World War II, subscribe and hit the notification bell. History isn't just about battles. It's about the small moments of humanity that changed everything.